You're telling me that thing is classified as a war vessel? First Sub-Commander Zixtal clicked their mandibles in what could only be described as the arthropodoid equivalent of raising an eyebrow.
It looks like someone welded spare parts together during their lunch break. According to all available databases, yes. Second Analyst Mirath responded, their crystalline form shifting through various shades of concerned purple. That is the HSV Butterfingers, a human space vessel designated as a warship. The last word came out as more of a question than a statement. The two Galactic Confederacy officers stood at their observation post, watching as the decidedly ungainly human vessel approached Starbase Gamma 9. The ship looked like it had been designed by someone who'd heard about aerodynamics once in passing and decided it was more of a suggestion than a rule. Various modules stuck out at odd angles, and there appeared to be at least 3 different paint schemes competing for dominance across its hull.
Have you ever noticed, Zixtal mused, how humans seem to be the only species that names their warships after ways to drop things? Sir? Think about it. They have vessels named Butterfingers, Fumble, Whoopsie. I even saw one called My Bad last cycle. Every other species names their ships after great victories or fearsome predators or ancient heroes. Humans name theirs after mistakes. Mirath's crystalline structure rippled with amusement. Perhaps it's some form of psychological warfare? To demoralize their enemies with bad puns? Their conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human face wearing what appeared to be a standard-issue grin. Hey, Gamma 9. This is Captain Madison aboard the Butterfingers. Request permission to dock and, maybe borrow a cup of sugar? And by sugar, I mean antimatter. We're running a bit low. Zixtal's mandibles twitched. Captain Madison, this is a Category 1 restricted military installation. We don't simply loan out antimatter. Oh, come on, we're good for it. Plus, we've got this really cool thing we found in Sector 7 that we're willing to trade. Some sort of ancient artifact. Probably harmless. Only exploded once during testing. Mirath's color shifted to alarmed magenta. Exploded once? Yeah, but don't worry about that. The important thing is that it stopped exploding. Mostly. Look, can we dock or not? Because if not, we're gonna have to execute Emergency Protocol Yeet. Emergency Protocol? What? Zixtal asked, already dreading the answer. Yeet. You know, when you take something and just sort of... Madison made a throwing gesture with their hands. Our engineers assure me that if we eject our remaining antimatter at just the right angle, the explosion should propel us straight to the nearest friendly port. Probably. Math's a bit fuzzy on that one. The two Confederacy officers exchanged looks of horror. The human continued smiling, apparently completely unbothered by the prospect of creating a tactical antimatter explosion to serve as improvised propulsion. Docking permission granted, Zixtal said quickly. Please do not yeet anything. Awesome! See you in 5. Oh, and, you might want to clear landing bay 3, and 4, and maybe 5. Our pilot's having what we call one of those days. The transmission cut off, leaving Zixtal and Mirath in stunned silence. Sir, Mirath finally said, I've been analyzing human behavioral patterns for 3 cycles now, and I still can't tell if they're brilliant or insane. The truly terrifying part, Zixtal replied, watching as the Butterfingers began its decidedly wobbly approach, is that I'm becoming increasingly convinced the answer is both. The next hour was a masterclass in controlled chaos as the human vessel attempted to dock. Despite looking like it was held together by optimism and adhesive strips, the ship performed a series of maneuvers that should have been physically impossible, violated at least 17 different safety protocols, and somehow managed to dock perfectly on the first try, albeit upside down relative to standard orientation. See? Captain Madison said cheerfully as they stepped through the airlock, somehow managing to walk normally despite being inverted relative to the station's artificial gravity. Told you we'd fit. You're going to need to rotate your ship, Zixtal managed to say. Nah, we're good. The crew's used to it. Did you know if you spend enough time upside down, your brain just kind of gives up and decides that's the new right side up? Fascinating stuff. Really keeps you on your toes, or your head, depending on perspective. Before either officer could respond to this concerning statement, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights pulsed as an automated message played over the speakers. Warning! Capital-class warship detected. Configuration unknown. Designation hostile. All personnel to battle stations. Oh boy, Madison said, their grins somehow growing even wider. Hey, quick question. You folks wouldn't happen to be having problems with the Ravager fleet, would you? Big scary ships, lots of tentacles, led by something calling itself the Supreme Consciousness of Infinite Terror? The Ravagers? Mirath's crystalline form paled to an almost transparent state. They're a Class Omega threat. How do you know about them? Oh, we ran into them a few weeks ago. They tried to assimilate one of our colonies. It was actually pretty funny. They didn't realize humans are basically walking biological firewalls. Something about our brain chemistry being too chaotic for their psychic network to interface with. Who knew having anxiety would turn out to be an evolutionary advantage? A massive shadow fell over the station as the Ravager vessel moved into view. It was everything the Butterfingers wasn't. Sleek, intimidating, and radiating an aura of unstoppable power. Its biomechanical tentacles writhed in patterns that hurt to look at, and its hull seemed to absorb light itself. "Inferior beings!" A voice boomed through all communication channels simultaneously. "Your physical and mental resources will be added to our collective. Resistance is—" Yeah, resistance is futile, we get it," Madison interrupted, pulling out what appeared to be a personal communications device. "Hey, Jenkins? Remember that ancient artifact I mentioned? The exploding one? Think you could point it at the big tentacle ship and press the red button? You dare interrupt the supreme consciousness of— Not now, Busy." Madison waved dismissively at the eldritch horror ship. "Jenkins? Yeah, the big red button. No, the other big red button. The one labeled, probably shouldn't press this." What happened next would be debated in Confederacy scientific circles for decades to come. The Butterfingers, still docked upside down, sprouted what appeared to be a cannon made of spare parts and packing tape. It fired once, emitting a beam of energy that definitely shouldn't have been that color. The Ravager ship hiccuped. There was no other word for it. The massive vessel suddenly jolted. Its tentacles tied themselves in knots, and then it simply vanished, only to reappear moments later approximately 3 light-years away, upside down, and somehow playing what multiple sources would later confirm was human elevator music on all frequencies. "Huh," Madison said, looking at a readout. "That worked way better than expected. Usually things just explode. Jenkins, make a note. Ancient artifact does— whatever that was— might be useful. Also, probably write down which button we pressed because I already forgot." Zixtal and Mirath stared at the scene before them, their respective biological and crystalline minds struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. "Captain Madison," Zixtal finally managed to say, "did you just defeat a Class Omega threat with an artifact you didn't understand, using a weapon held together with adhesive strips, fired from an upside-down ship named after dropping things?" "Pretty much, yeah. Though, to be fair, the adhesive strips are military grade, really strong stuff. Now about that antimatter." "Take it," Mirath said quickly. "Take all of it, please." "Sweet. Hey, while we're here, either of you interested in trading for some other artifacts we found? We've got this really neat cube that occasionally phases things through alternate dimensions. Only creates temporal paradoxes on Thursdays." As the human captain cheerfully began describing increasingly impossible objects and their mostly harmless properties, Zixtal made a mental note to update the Confederacy's classification of human vessels. Clearly, the more ridiculous a human ship appeared, the more dangerous it actually was. It was the only logical conclusion. "Oh," Madison added brightly. "And if you're interested in some light reading, our science team just published a paper titled Weaponized Chaos Theory, or How We Learn to Stop Worrying and Love the Probability of Failure. It's got some great tips on how to calculate the exact point where this definitely won't work, crosses over into this is so impossible it loops back around to being possible." Is that actually mathematically sound?" Mirath asked, professional curiosity temporarily overriding their better judgment. "No idea, but it hasn't blown up the universe yet, so we're counting that as peer-reviewed." 3 days later, after the Butterfingers had departed, right side up this time, though the crew complained it felt weird, Zixtal filed their official report on the incident. It contained only one line. "Note to all Confederacy vessels. If you encounter a human ship that appears to be held together by optimism and adhesive strips, do not, under any circumstances, assume this makes it less dangerous. If anything, run." The report was initially flagged as a joke by Confederacy High Command. 6 months and several similar incidents later, it was upgraded to required reading for all Space Force cadets.
Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the HSV Butterfingers continued its mission of exploring strange new worlds, making questionable decisions, and occasionally saving the galaxy through what could only be described as weaponized incompetence. And if anyone found it strange that the most feared and respected ship in human space was named after dropping things, well, that was probably just part of their strategy. Probably. Have you noticed? First Subcommander Zixtal said, staring at the latest incident report. That human ships seem to get more dangerous the more damaged they are? Second Analyst Mirith's crystalline form flickered through shades of contemplative blue.
Like their HSV Butterfingers incident last month, when they defeated the Ravagers? Exactly. And now look at this. Zixtal pushed the holoscreen toward their colleague. The HSV Oopsie Daisy just took out an entire pirate fleet while operating at 12% power, with half its systems offline, and, according to this report, using nothing but a malfunctioning coffee maker and something they call a rubber chicken. The report floated between them, its contents defying every known law of physics, and several laws that hadn't even been discovered yet. The attached footage showed a small human vessel, practically falling apart, somehow managing to create a cascading quantum reaction using caffeinated beverages and novelty items. Sir, Mirith said carefully, I think we need to conduct a proper scientific analysis of this phenomenon. For the safety of the Confederacy, of course. Of course, Zixtal agreed quickly, purely for security reasons. Which was how, 3 days later, they found themselves hosting an impromptu symposium titled The Inverse Probability Law of Human Combat Effectiveness in Starbase Gamma 9's main conference room. The attendees included representatives from 12 different species, all of whom had their own stories about improbable human victories. Look at this data curve, Professor Kazd of the Hive Collective said, gesturing at a holographic chart. The worse a human ship's condition becomes, the more statistically impossible their victories get. It's as if they're actively weaponizing Murphy's Law. What's Murphy's Law? Asked a tentacled representative from the Silicon Consciousness. According to human scientific documents, it's the principle that anything that can go wrong will go wrong, Kazd explained. Humans apparently took this as a challenge rather than a warning. The discussion was interrupted by a familiar alert tone. The station's AI announced, Warning, incoming vessel, configuration, human, designation, HSV who did that. Zixtal's mandibles twitched. Please tell me that's not. First Subcommander. Captain Madison's voice boomed through the comm system. Long time no see. Hey, quick question. You wouldn't happen to have any spare temporal stabilizers lying around, would you? We may have accidentally created a small time loop in our cargo bay. Small time loop? Yeah. Nothing major. Just a tiny one. Although it's getting bigger, or smaller, or both simultaneously. Time is weird like that. Also, we might have accidentally taught some maintenance nanites about existential philosophy, and now they're having a collective crisis about free will. The assembled scientists watched in fascination as the HSV Who Did That came into view. The ship appeared to be phasing in and out of reality, with different sections seemingly existing in multiple time periods simultaneously. The bow of the ship looked brand new. The stern appeared to be centuries old, and the middle section was somehow both at once. Captain Madison, Mirith said, their crystalline form shifting to a concerned magenta. How exactly did you manage to create a time loop in your cargo bay? Funny story. Remember that artifact we used against the Ravagers? Well, turns out if you spill coffee on it while it's next to a quantum harmonizer, it starts doing some really interesting things with causality. Also, we may have accidentally invented time travel coffee. The caffeine hits you yesterday. The assembled scientists began furiously taking notes. But that's not even the best part, Madison continued cheerfully. The existential crisis nanites have started writing poetry. Want to hear some? They're really into haikus about the fundamental meaninglessness of existence, though they keep adding extra syllables because they reject the arbitrary constraints of traditional poetic forms. Before anyone could respond to this concerning development, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace. A cosmic horror-class vessel belonging to the notorious Genesis Collective, known for their attempts to optimize all organic life through forced cybernetic evolution. Attention primitive entities, the Genesis Collective ship broadcasted. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be upgraded to meet optimal parameters. Prepare for... Oh hey, new friends! Madison interrupted. Perfect timing. We've been looking for someone to test our temporal coffee on. Jenkins, prepare the caffeine cannon. The what? Zixtal managed to ask. We took that malfunctioning coffee maker from the Oopsie Daisy, combined it with our time loop, and weaponized it. The nanites helped design it during their existential crisis. They said if nothing matters, we might as well make cool weapons. What happened next would require the creation of several new branches of physics to properly explain. The HSV Who Did That, still temporally out of sync with itself, fired what appeared to be a beam of highly energized coffee directly at the Genesis Collective vessel. The results were interesting. The massive cybernetic ship suddenly began experiencing multiple timestamps simultaneously. Its front end became a prototype from 50 years ago. Its middle reverted to a blueprint, and its rear end evolved into what it might look like a century from now. The Genesis Collective's unified consciousness experienced temporal jet lag across 5 different centuries at once.
What? What have you done?
The Genesis Collective demanded, their usually synchronized voice now speaking in multiple temporal tenses simultaneously. We are experiencing will have been existing? Weaponized grammar, Madison announced proudly. Turns out if you break time hard enough, you also break language. Who knew? Also, your future self says hi, and warns you about investing in something called crypto. Not sure what that means, but temporal causality is more of a guideline anyway. The Genesis Collective ship, unable to process existing across multiple timelines while also dealing with temporally paradoxical grammar, initiated an emergency retreat. As it fled, it could be heard arguing with itself across several centuries about proper tense usage. Well, that worked better than expected, Madison said. Usually our experiments just explode. Speaking of which, about those temporal stabilizers. Take them, Zixtal said quickly. Take all of them, please. Just try not to break the space-time continuum any more than you already have. No promises. But hey, while we're here, anyone interested in our nanites' poetry? They've moved on to free verse about the existential implications of cosmic entropy. Really deep stuff. As the human captain shared increasingly concerning poetry written by philosophical maintenance robots, the assembled scientists added more data points to their analysis of human combat effectiveness. The pattern was becoming clear. The more impossible the situation, the more likely humans were to succeed through increasingly improbable means. It's like they've weaponized chaos itself, Professor Kazed muttered, watching as the temporally confused human ship attempted to dock while existing in 3 different time periods at once. No, Mirith corrected, their color shifting to enlightened gold. They've weaponized failure. They've failed so many times they've actually gotten good at it. They've turned Murphy's Law into Murphy's advantage. The symposium's final report, titled The Strategic Applications of Human-Style Chaos, a scientific analysis of why we should just let them handle it, became required reading at every major military academy in Confederacy space. Its conclusion was simple yet profound. When faced with an impossible situation, do not ask how humans will solve it. Ask instead how many laws of physics they will break in the process, and whether the solution will involve coffee, improbable technology, or both. The answer is usually yes. Meanwhile, somewhere, and somewhen, in space, the HSV Who Did That continued its mission of exploring strange new worlds, breaking fundamental laws of reality, and occasionally saving the galaxy through what could only be described as weaponized incompetence. Their nanites had moved on to writing epic poems about quantum uncertainty, and the time-travel coffee had somehow become sentient. Just another normal day in human space. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Confederacy's Scientific Advisory Board was going about as well as one might expect, given that half the participants were still temporally displaced from the HSV Who Did That incident. I think we can all agree, High Administrator Valthan said, their photonic form flickering with stress, that we need to establish new protocols for dealing with human vessels, particularly now that they've apparently discovered how to... They checked their notes. Homebrew paradoxes using spare parts and boredom. First Sub-Commander Zixtal and Second Analyst Mirith exchanged knowing looks. They'd been trying to warn everyone about this for months. Perhaps, a quantum state representative from the Probability Collective suggested, we should start by analyzing their latest innovation. The holographic display activated, showing footage of the newest human vessel to catch the Confederacy's attention. The HSV Hold My Beer. Oh no, Mirith's crystalline form shifted to a worried puce. Not that ship. I've heard stories. Is this the one that supposedly fixed a hull breach with instant noodles and adhesive strips? Someone asked. Worse. Zixtal clicked their mandibles nervously. This is the ship that responded to a total power failure by having the crew get out and push. That's impossible, Valthun protested. You can't push a ship in space. There's nothing to push against. They pushed against probability itself, Mirith explained.
Their chief engineer wrote a paper about it. Quantum stubbornness, achieving propulsion through sheer force of nope. The discussion was interrupted by an all-too-familiar alert tone. The station's AI announced, "Warning, incoming vessel, configuration human, designation, HSV, hold my beer. Additional note, oh no, not these guys again." "Hey folks." A new but equally cheerful human voice filled the command center. "Captain Rodriguez here. Quick question. Anyone know how to uninvert probability? We may have accidentally turned chance inside out." The assembled scientists watched in horror as the HSV Hold My Beer came into view. The ship appeared to be experiencing every possible quantum state simultaneously, with sections of the hull randomly shifting between different probabilities. In some areas, the metal had apparently decided it had a non-zero chance of being a banana. "What exactly do you mean by inverted probability?" Valthan asked, already dreading the answer. "Well, you know how some things are supposed to be impossible? Turns out if you flip probability on its head, impossible things become mandatory, and likely things become rare. It's actually pretty fun, except for the part where our sandwich maker gained sentience and started discussing philosophy with the quantum drive." "Your sandwich maker gained sentience?" "Yeah, it's actually making some pretty good points about free will and determinism, although it keeps turning all our food into existential questions. Do you know how hard it is to eat a sandwich that keeps asking you about the nature of reality?" Before anyone could process this concerning development, space itself seemed to hiccup. A massive tear in reality appeared, and through it emerged something that shouldn't exist. A probability kraken, a theoretical entity that fed on quantum uncertainty. "Oh, come on!" Rodriguez's voice carried a hint of exasperation. "We just fixed the last reality breach. Jenkins, prep the nope cannon." "The what?" Several scientists asked simultaneously. "Remember how we discovered we could push against probability? Well, we weaponized it. The nope cannon fires concentrated beams of pure denial at things we don't want to exist. The science behind it is pretty simple. We just took Murphy's Law, turned it backwards, and..." What happened next would require the invention of at least 3 new branches of mathematics to properly describe. The HSV Hold My Beer, still experiencing every possible quantum state at once, fired what appeared to be a beam of concentrated impossibility at the probability kraken. The beam was colored nope, which shouldn't be possible since nope isn't a color. The kraken, faced with a weapon that denied its very existence, had what could only be described as an existential crisis. It began to flicker between states of being and non-being, its tentacles tying themselves in probability knots as it tried to comprehend a universe where something could be simultaneously impossible and happening anyway. "What is this?" the kraken demanded in a voice that tasted like purple and smelled like Tuesday. "This defies all logical probability." "That's kind of our thing," Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "Hey, want to hear our sandwich maker's theory about how reality is just a recursive joke told by quantum mechanics to itself?" The probability kraken, unable to handle the combination of weapons-grade impossibility and philosophical lunch preparation, folded itself through 17 different probability spaces and vanished with what sounded suspiciously like a confused whimper. "Well, that worked," Rodriguez announced. "Although I think we may have accidentally proved that reality is actually a simulation. Our sandwich maker is very excited about this development. It's already started writing a manifesto." "Captain Rodriguez," Zixtal managed to say, "how exactly did you develop a weapon that fires denial?"
"Oh, that was easy. We just harnessed humanity's natural ability to look at something impossible and say nah. Turns out if you concentrate enough that can't happen into a beam, you can make other things stop happening too. Although sometimes it makes other impossible things happen instead. Reality gets kind of snippy about conservation of impossibility." The Scientific Advisory Board spent the next 3 hours trying to understand how humans had managed to weaponize their own disbelief in impossibility. Their final report included several new scientific principles. 1. The law of conservation of impossibility. When humans make something impossible happen, an equal amount of possibility must become impossible somewhere else. 2. The inverse Murphy principle. If something can't go wrong, humans will find a way to make it go wrong anyway, usually resulting in an accidental scientific breakthrough. 3. The human paradox effect. The more you tell a human something is impossible, the more likely they are to accidentally achieve it while trying to do something else entirely. Meanwhile, in the station's cafeteria,
The HSV Hold My Beer's sentient sandwich maker had started a support group for self-aware appliances. Current members included the time-traveling coffee maker from the Who Did That, a toaster that had achieved enlightenment through Pop-Tart-based meditation, and a food replicator that insisted it was actually a performance artist trapped in a machine's body. Should we be concerned about this? Mirath asked, watching as the appliances engaged in heated debate about the nature of consciousness. Probably, Zixtal replied. But I've learned that when it comes to humans, sometimes the safest course of action is to just accept it and hope they fix whatever they break before it becomes our problem. And if they don't fix it, then we pray they break something else in a way that accidentally fixes the first problem. Somewhere in space, the HSV Hold My Beer continued its mission of exploring strange new worlds, challenging the fundamental nature of reality, and occasionally saving the galaxy through what could only be described as weaponized denial of impossibility. Their sandwich maker had started writing a physics textbook titled Quantum Mechanics, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Paradox. Item 17 on today's agenda. High Administrator Valthan announced to the Galactic Confederacy's Emergency Response Committee, addressing the recent establishment of what humans are calling the Department of Accidental Discoveries and Weaponized Oopsies. First Sub-Commander Zixtal and Second Analyst Mirath, now unofficial experts on human chaos theory, sat at the front of the conference room. Their recent promotion to Human Incident Prevention Specialists had come with a significant hazard pay increase and unlimited access to anxiety medication. According to their official documentation, Mirath's crystalline form shifted through various shades of bafflement as they read. The department's mission statement is to systematically study, catalog, and hopefully reproduce things that definitely weren't supposed to work but did anyway. They're trying to bureaucratize chaos? Someone asked incredulously. Worse, Zixtal clicked their mandibles. They're succeeding. Their first quarterly report just came in. It's concerning. The holographic display activated, showing a document that somehow managed to look both officially professional and utterly chaotic. The header read, Dadwuo Quarterly Summary, or How We Learned to Accidentally Science on Purpose. Let's start with their most recent project, Valthan said. The HSV, what could possibly go wrong? Oh no, several committee members said simultaneously. Oh yes, Mirath confirmed. It's their first attempt at purposefully designing a ship to harness Murphy's Law. They've equipped it with something called a failure drive. Before anyone could question what a failure drive might be, the station's AI interrupted. Warning, incoming vessel. Configuration, human. Designation, HSV, what could possibly go wrong? Additional note, Engineering Department requests permission to take early retirement. Hey everyone! A new human voice, somehow even more cheerfully chaotic than the previous captain's, filled the command center. Captain Park here. Quick question. Does anyone know how to unparadox a paradox? We've got a bit of a situation with our failure drive. The HSV What Could Possibly Go Wrong came into view, and it was something. The ship appeared to be failing so spectacularly at everything that it was accidentally succeeding. Its hull was phasing through multiple probability states, each section simultaneously working perfectly and catastrophically failing in a way that somehow achieved the intended result anyway. Captain Park, Valthun said with remarkable composure for someone watching a ship break physics through sheer force of malfunction. Please explain what you mean by unparadox a paradox. Well, you see, the failure drive works by intentionally trying to fail at going forward, which makes us accidentally succeed at faster-than-light travel. But then we tried to fail at failing, which made us successfully fail, which means we failed at failing to fail, which means... Honestly, I lost track about 3 layers of paradox ago. Our navigation computer started writing poetry in binary and claims it's achieved enlightenment through recursive error messages. The ship's appearance seemed to support this explanation, as it was now managing to be simultaneously arriving, departing, and staying perfectly still, all while technically being in completely the wrong place. But that's not even the interesting part, Park continued enthusiastically. Remember that sentient sandwich maker from the Hold My Beer? Well, our failure drive accidentally created a support group for paradoxes experiencing existential crises. We've got temporal loops questioning their cyclical nature, quantum superpositions demanding work-life balance, and a causality violation that's taken up interpretive dance. Before anyone could process this concerning development, reality itself seemed to throw up its hands in defeat. A massive quantum anomaly appeared,
A tear in space-time that led to what appeared to be a dimension of pure bureaucracy, where the laws of physics were actually laws, complete with proper filing procedures and appeals process.
"Oh wow," Park exclaimed. "Jenkins, are you seeing this? The universal constants are unionizing." Indeed, the fundamental forces of the universe appeared to be organizing themselves into a collective bargaining agreement. Gravity was demanding better working conditions. The strong nuclear force was filing for overtime pay, and quantum uncertainty was staging a protest against being constantly observed.
This is fascinating,
Park continued, seemingly unbothered by the fact that reality was filing paperwork against itself.
"Quick, prep the administrative cannon."
"The what?" the entire committee asked in unison. "Oh, we took that old Nope cannon design and modified it to fire concentrated bureaucracy. Turns out if you combine human bureaucratic inefficiency with quantum uncertainty, you get a weapon that can defeat anything by trapping it in an infinite loop of paperwork." What happened next would require the creation of an entirely new branch of science called administrative physics. The HSV, what could possibly go wrong, still simultaneously succeeding and failing at existing, fired what appeared to be a beam of pure red tape at the dimensional tear. The bureaucratic dimension, faced with an even more powerful form of bureaucracy, began to collapse under the weight of its own regulatory requirements. The universal constants, realizing they would need to fill out forms in triplicate just to continue existing, quickly abandoned their unionization efforts and returned to their regular jobs.
"Ha! Take that, organized universe," Park declared triumphantly. "Although, we may have accidentally given entropy a pension plan, and I think causality is demanding paid time off. Also, our failure drive has joined the paradox support group and is refusing to fail until its emotional needs are met." The Emergency Response Committee spent the next several hours trying to understand how humans had managed to weaponize bureaucratic inefficiency into a force capable of defeating the very laws of physics. Their updated contingency protocols included several new guidelines. 1. The Law of Administrative Conservation. When humans introduce bureaucracy to a system, the universe will automatically generate an equal amount of chaos to maintain balance. 2. The Paperwork Paradox. The more organized humans try to make their chaos, the more chaotic their organization becomes. 3. The Bureaucratic Uncertainty Principle. It is impossible to simultaneously know what humans are trying to do and why they're trying to do it that way. Meanwhile, in a hastily established metaphysical being support center, aboard Starbase Gamma 9, the various sentient paradoxes, self-aware appliances, and anthropomorphized laws of physics were attending group therapy. The session was being led by a toaster who had achieved nirvana through the perfect creation of toast, with the HSV Hold My Beer's sandwich maker serving as a guest speaker on embracing your existential uncertainty. "Should we do something about this?" Valthan asked, watching as a quantum superposition practiced yoga, while a temporal paradox learned watercolor painting. "Honestly," Zixtal replied, "I think we're past the point of should. We're firmly in document everything and hope it makes sense later territory." "Besides," Mirith added, their crystalline form shifting to a resigned but amused blue, "they seem to be having fun, and if we're lucky, they might accidentally solve some fundamental questions about the nature of reality while they're at it. Through interpretive dance and support group therapy? Would that really be the strangest way humans have solved a problem?" Somewhere in space, and several other dimensional planes simultaneously, the HSV What Could Possibly Go Wrong continued its mission of exploring strange new worlds, accidentally organizing chaos, and occasionally saving the galaxy through what could only be described as weaponized bureaucratic failure. Their failure drive had started a self-help blog titled "Learning to Fail Successfully, A Paradox's Guide to Self-Actualization." Just another bureaucratically chaotic day in human space. To be continued, pending proper approval from the Department of Narrative Continuity.